Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Weekends of Weird. Before we get started, I know you're watching this on the Paranormal Perception YouTube channel. I gotta let you know this is the only time you're gonna get to watch this on the YouTube channel. Why? Because we didn't have too many people come into this one, and it's okay. It's the first one that happened with OC Paracon. Now seems like we have all of OC in LA coming, so it'll take a while. But no, the main thing is don't wait until it goes on the YouTube channel. It won't. We're going to do this all year long, once a month. It'll be different speakers, different paranormal speakers, different topics. So keep watching us. We'll announce it here on the YouTube channel, on our social media. But mainly, listen to Paranormal Perception, the show every Friday, new episodes, paranormalperception.show. So now, perfect for this weekend. If you're watching this on Sunday, hope you're wearing green. I'm not, but you can't pinch me, so it doesn't really matter. So now, in just a second, we're going to talk all about leprechauns. You think you know? Maybe you don't. You're really going to know after you watch this segment. Here we go. Welcome everybody to Paranormal Perception Presents Weekends of Weird. This is the first one. The audience is here. We'll introduce you to the guests in just a second. This is St. Patrick's Day weekend, and most of you may not remember what you did for St. Patrick's Day because it's just a drinking, kind of like Cinco de Mayo. It's a drinking holiday. Not really. There is something other than beer that is always attached to St. Patrick's Day. That is leprechauns. But do you know about leprechauns? Do you know about other little people? Fae, the fairy folk. You will in just a second. So on to talk about it, it's not me. On to talk about it, someone that really, really knows about leprechauns, the legends, the lore, and everything. One, because they're from there. They're from Ireland, and, well, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to let them tell the story. Here they are, McGuirk and Ken Smith. You've seen them before. Here they are. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Henry, how you doing? Thank you.
So both of you, before we get started, don't know you, and you should at this point if you listen to Paranormal Perception. They're part of the Phantom Journeys podcast. We've talked about that before. And now a new sponsor for this year, along with Alien Soda Company, is Phantom's Coffee, Phantom Journeys Coffee. They have, you see two here. There's all kinds of flavors. We'll have the on the link. You'll have a link to the website where you can get yours. It's definitely, you hear me say it in the last couple episodes. It's definitely a tool that you need to have when you're out investigating. Yeah, you can have your REM pod. You can have the latest audio, whatever new gadget there is. But this right here, this is my Phantom Coffee. That's the most important one. Why? Because a lot of you that have gone on investigations know when it's an all-nighter, you're excited when you get there, but then the energy starts going down and nothing happens. But when you get this, it's good enough to wake up the dead. You're not dead. I hope not yet. It'll wake you up too. So we'll talk about that towards the end. But now let's get to why you guys are actually here. And that is because we're going to talk leprechauns and other little people. So go ahead and explain, whoever wants to jump in, what do you guys know? What makes you guys such experts on leprechaun legend and lore?
Well, I guess because I'm Irish, I'm automatically associated with leprechauns. So, well, where they come from, mostly from Irish folklore, really. Old stories that you're going to tell your children to avoid certain situations, really. That's where a leprechaun would come from, you know. There's a lot of stories within the leprechaun that we can cover too.
Well, the first one I want to ask is, are leprechauns human or what are they?
Technically, the leprechaun is a fae or of fae origin. It's kind of a trickster spirit too, so it would be associated with the jinn and kind of a genie, the ability to grant a possible wish. So yeah.
So they always promise you that they're going to grant you a wish, but you know, they're tricksters. They trick you into not actually getting that wish most of the time.
So you're saying they're not quite lucky from Lucky Charms.
That's as close as you're gonna get for a leprechaun, I think.
Well, I mean, you describe them as tricksters, but are they friendly, or do they interact with humans at all?
They are very unsocial. The closest you'll get is something close to kind of like a wisp. You might see like a strange object floating down the street. I'm not saying this is always. It's rare, but you'll see something go through the forest or through back roads, rural areas, that kind of thing. You know.
And that's where kind of they're the leprechaun, when you catch them, is so significant because they are so antisocial and they tend to stay away from most people. That when you do see one and then you do capture it, that's where the pot of gold and all the wishing and all that stuff comes in because it's such a rare. It's kind of like a four-leaf clover. It's out there, but you hardly ever see one.
Yeah. Well, let's get to that because you actually, when you guys came on Paranormal Perception to tease it, I asked you that is there a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow? I mean, is there?
Well, I mean, the leprechauns say there is. You know, they'll. It's kind of like that story where the farmers are out in the field and they caught a leprechaun, and the leprechaun granted them a wish, but they wanted more wishes, and so the leprechaun was like, "Hey, look, it's a pot of gold, and it's right there. See where that rainbow is? It's just there. If you go there, you're gonna find riches beyond belief." So the couple went there. The leprechaun went this way. You know what I mean? It's kind of getting out of Dodge, kind of trick the humans with like riches and gold.
I know a few humans like that, but we'll leave it at that. Now, this it sounds like it should be an obvious answer. Where I was going to ask you, where do they live? I know you would say Ireland, but I mean, I'm talking about specifically, like, do they live in caves or where do they live?
Because they're kind of they live in rural areas and they're unsocial spirits. So you might find these in caves or where humans don't go, dangerous places. You know, so it's probably best not to try and look for leprechauns.
Well, wait, because a second ago you mentioned if you catch one. So two things come out of that is how would humans know to and how to catch them, and how would they see them?
Mm-hmm. Well, you see, leprechauns, because they're on the go, they're kind of like they're wandering spirits. So you might just randomly bump into one. I'm not saying always, but like the story of the couple, they were tending to their farm, and a leprechaun was trying to steal their crops for food, you know, and so they caught him.
Well, that leads to another one. Can you leave offerings to them so they'll leave you alone?
Or to entice them to bring them closer so you can get their gold.
But the gold is fake, so therefore.
That's true. But you don't know that until after you
Yeah, exactly.
get tricks.
I'm sure if you leave stuff out for the leprechaun, they'll take it. They won't thank you. They'll just take it.
Yeah. Now, sometimes they're depicted mainly in movies, books as shoemakers. Is that part true?
Well, I mean, it would be in the sense that you know, having to walk around everywhere, they have to repair their own shoes, or maybe they'd be like shoe cleaners too for their people to try and get some more gold or something, you know, more food or something just to pass their time, I guess. You know.
Okay, so here's where we get a little bit more personal. You hinted at this when I first met you. Ken actually told me you should talk to Matt. He knows a few stories about leprechauns. You didn't tell me too much because I already had something like this in mind. But what experiences, what you personal experience have you had, or do you have anyone that's had with leprechauns back in Ireland?
Well, we do have a leprechaun museum in Ireland, and it actually was the hosting area for Dublin Paracon for a while. There's people in Ireland that claim to have leprechaun bones from little people that showed up in Ireland years ago that they found, I guess. So, experience-wise, myself, I've seen things that I can't explain in Ireland, and it's usually around faerie or face circles. So yeah, it's few and far between with stories. They're hard to come by.
Welcome to the club. I think there's a lot of people in the audience that we all have a lot of experiences that we can't explain. That's why we love this stuff.
I haven't been to Ireland, but so I've had a little experience with leprechauns, and I spent a couple of years in Tennessee, and there was a lot of reports in the south of the United States of actual leprechauns like you'd see in Ireland. I had a couple of people that came to me with stories where they were out hunting at night and they saw kind of like a glowish green in a field, and they went to go investigate, and they described seeing, the typical leprechaun that you see in the drawings and in cartoons and stuff. And another instance was a couple saw one sitting in a tree, and when they went to go investigate, it just kind of like poofed and was gone. But they claimed that it looked just like, the leprechauns from Ireland, and so that was my experience with the leprechaun in the southern United States, which I found really interesting. That something that was very Irish, and being in the U.S. one, but in an area that didn't have a lot of like Irish. If it was Boston or something where there's a lot of Irish immigrants went, I'd see that, but I didn't expect those type of stories from the South.
Well, yeah, confirm that, Matt. Is the leprechaun, we tie it to Ireland right away, but are they indigenous to Ireland, or can they be found everywhere in the world?
Like Ken said, like there was a lot of Irish immigrants had come to Ireland. So if you think like if these things are wandering about, they could wander onto a ship and just come over and stay with Irish families, and not so much with them but around them, and with their lore and with their stories, they'd continue to live on and over here. So yeah, for sure.
Here, and you kind of hinted at that at the beginning, that here we have, well, not in a mean way, but to scare our kids into doing their chores, whatever it is, we tell them the boogeyman will come or something will happen. Is the leprechaun or other fae, are they treated that way in Ireland with kids?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, it kind of like you kind of teach your kids to stay away from the forest or open areas and stuff like that, because they could go missing. And some people might put it down to the leprechauns or fae or whatever kidnap them and stuff like that, or other types of creatures from Irish folklore too. So.
But a lot of the original leprechaun stories that that kind of made the lore. The leprechaun didn't wear green like we all associate. He was always in red, dressed nice, and so I've always kind of assumed myself, and I don't know how true this is on the Irish side, but that the leprechaun kind of over time, started wearing green, and green, is associated with greed.
Yeah.
It's kind of a warning tale to some degree. Don't go chasing all the gold, or your greed will get to you. And I think it's kind of one way to look at it as well. That the leprechaun will, trick you into going for the riches, and then the next thing you know, you have nothing, and you're in the middle of nowhere. You don't know where you're at.
Yeah. Also, going back to when you came on Paranormal Perception to tease it, I asked you, what is one thing that you want everyone to know about leprechauns that they don't know? You said it was a trickster. Now that we're here, we're actually doing it. What else do you want people to know about leprechauns that they don't know but should know?
Well, I guess just leave them be. Everyone, if they see a leprechaun, their first instinct is like to try and catch it. But like that, they will get to a stage where it'll end up trying to grant you a wish to give you more riches, and that wish or whatever they try and give you will probably make your life worse than make you richer.
So I wonder if that's where "be careful what you wish for" came from.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So there's a little bit or a lot about leprechauns. Before we take a little break and bring in Crystal for some other stuff. Is there anything else you want everybody to know about leprechauns?
Oh, Ken?
I'm asking only because I see an entire book over there. Book of legends.
I don't really know. I guess just leave them be, really. Let nature be nature and You know, let people be people. Don't play with
How about-
what you don't know. You know.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say it sounds like what I say a lot on Paranormal Perception about ghosts, spirits is respect them, not just leave them alone, but respect them, show some respect.
Yeah.
They're not humans. I said that, we established that already. They're part of the faerie little people. But again, like everything, just respect everything that's here. It's here. It's its own thing. It's because it's not human. We humans, we tend to either, oh, it's evil because I don't understand it, or want to poke at it and try to catch it and keep it as a pet or whatever. Just don't, because this one, especially this pet, this will bite you back. Not like a dog, but it'll bite you back in ways that you're not gonna like. So that is the first segment where I'm gonna bring in Crystal now, and she'll ask some questions. We may get some questions from the audience. But before we get to that, here's a little special treat that I mentioned. I think a lot of you know who it is. And then we'll be right back.
Oh, not hey everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Shanclen Shadow Productions. Now, this is going to be really cool because I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the knowledge that I have of little people. Now, little people have always been here since human beings have always been here on this earth. And they, in a sense, are another classification of being that is well on their own. You know, it's kind of come down to a lot of folklore and folk tales of, you know, they could be leprechauns, it could be, you know, little people that kind of run around in the volcanoes of Hawaii or anything like that. But here in the Americas, you know, we have our own little people too, as well, in our indigenous stories and indigenous culture. And a lot of times when it comes down to these stories, it's a lot of, you know, just acknowledging their existence and kind of leaving them alone. They have their own civilizations, their own peoples, and how they live, and their ceremonies that they do, and reasons for being on this earth. And one of the encounters I actually had was when I was younger, and I went up to a Lakota ceremony up north. And in that ceremony, you kind of do a lot of camping and everything. A very, very beautiful area, kind of in the plains country. And when we were there during the ceremony, they say, you know, when the sun falls and it's nighttime, you kind of have to just really go to bed and not really explore anywhere. And so when that happens, they say that the spirits come out at night to do their ceremonies and do what they need to out there in the ceremonial grounds. So one night I was sleeping in a tent, and it's like how I said, it's kind of very outdoorsy. You know, there's no houses around in that ceremonial grounds and everything. You can either sleep in a teepee or you can go ahead and sleep in a camp, which mainly what everybody did. So one night we were sleeping, and not too far away from our tent and everything, there's a cook shack there. So that's where, you know, we feed a lot of the campers that are there at the time. And when I was younger, I was a very light sleeper. So when it came to noises or anything, any little noise would kind of honestly wake me up. So when I was sleeping, I started hearing some of the pots and the pans started moving in the cook shack. And I look at my phone, and it was just like 2 o'clock, or maybe it was either 2 or like 3 or 4, early morning, before the morning dawn came up. You know, you started hearing those pots and pans start moving around and everything. And I was like, okay, it's probably my mom, or it's probably my grandma, you know, doing something. Maybe they're up late, you know, they want to make something, or they're just cleaning or whatever. But then something kind of made me start thinking otherwise, because not too long after, I started hearing little kind of footsteps running around my tent. They're all and then you hear, you know, you kind of hear little tiny voices, but they're kind of whispering. And I was just like, what is that? So I wake up my brother, and then he listens, and he hears it too. So he ends up getting up out of the tent and waking up, and then going over, looking around the cook shack. And then after he started unzipping the tent, the noise just kind of went away. So when there's on the campsite, I would say about 30-40 feet east of us or west of us, there's a ravine. There's a hill that goes down into a ravine. It's pretty steep too. And we were just like, what's that noise coming from? Is it coming from down there? So we got up, and then my uncle was awake too. Everyone was just kind of looking around. And you know, in the Navajo Nation, you know, you don't really get to see little people as much as they do up there, especially for a ceremony like this. So we end up walking our way toward the ravine, and out of nowhere, you know, we heard something go right in front of us on the ground. I was like, what the heck? So we bust out our flashlights, we look around, and in the grass you see, looks like to be a little tiny spear that had like some really interesting carvings on there. And we were just like, is this a spear? And then when my uncle saw that, he said, "This, hey, I think this is from the little people. These guys have those little beings that run around here at night. I don't know if they're getting food or kind of getting supplies from our little tent area, but my uncle already knew the stories that the Lakota people used to say about them, and he was just like, okay, it's time for all of us to kind of go to bed. So they told me to go to bed, and my uncle and my brother stayed up, and they were kind of just looking around. And the next day I asked them, I was like, so did anything else happen? And they told me that while I was away, they kind of sat there and they were having a smoke over by the fireplace. And then they turned and they looked, and there was like a little tiny fireball that came out of the ravine that went into the camp too. It's just a little tiny thing. It scorched a little bit of grass that was right there. They showed me where it was. And I was like, I couldn't help but think, I was like, it's just cute. But they would tell us stories that that's why you don't go in the ravines and everything out there. Otherwise, they're going to steal you they're kind of like one of those scary tales you tell children not to run off. If you're a little kid and you run down there and play and everything, you're not going to come back up. The little people are going to take you and steal you. But I do know of, different bands of little people that kind of go around. There's Lakota people. There's a couple in Arizona as well. And as well as all around Turtle Island. So there's lots of stories of little people that run around. Each have their own lores and reasons for being on this earth and everything. So just be respectful of them, just acknowledge that they're there, because it's one of those things, like if you go and find these beings, it's one of those things that humankind and human beings aren't really going to respect. They're going to want to monetize it. They're going to want to do all these things that's just, going to ruin their lives, in a sense, ruin their existence of what their purpose is for being on here, and that's just something that for me, being really respectful of all these beings and acknowledging that all these beings have their place on this earth, just acknowledge and tell the stories and everything, and just let them be, just like how we did when we were younger. We didn't go down there to be like, I have to see a little person, or I have to see these beings, or I have to tell the world these stories and everything and all that. It's just like, okay, they're there, yeah, just let them live their lives. They have a reason for being here on this earth. So yeah, that's my little story that I have of little people, my little experience and some teachings that I have. But if you guys have experienced little people, just be respectful, be mindful that they're conscious beings and they do their own little thing. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of the stories that are on here, and I hope you guys have a great evening. I'll go on that.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to this magical show, my favorite kind of show, right? Talking about magical things with magical people. Before I hand it off to the audience to ask if they have any questions for Matt and Ken, I actually have a couple questions that I wanted to ask you guys myself. And obviously, I'm very familiar with the Fae, and I'm very into that. When I'm doing readings, I have several different types of cards, like for tarot or oracle cards, ranging from just like the regular tarot cards to haunted, spooky themed ones, mermaids. My favorite ones to honestly use are the ones that do have to, I don't have leprechaun cards, but the fairy tarot and fairy oracle. So I did have a question. I know you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. There are other types of little magical people, if you want to call them that. Can you guys talk a little bit about what those type of little people or what have you would be?
Yeah, for sure. Well, one of the main ones would be kind of like the elementals, kind of like they'd be best known as kind of like Willow of the Wisp, kind of tree spirits. They would be more associated with Fae. And then we also have something that's very similar to a leprechaun. It's called a Pookie. I believe that's kind of more. Would that be more Hispanic or like kind of? I'm kind of thinking, or maybe that was the
Pookie.
Pookie.
I know I've seen that one mentioned somewhere. There's so many, and from all the different cultures, so it kind of seems like some of our little magical creatures kind of cross over into each other's cultures, which is really cool, right? This is really cool stuff to talk about, guys. This is a good one today. Okay, I don't want to be offensive, so I'll just start off by saying this. as an American, I know that we have a way of like Americanizing things and putting our little twist on things, such as leprechauns and St. Patty's Day, and other from other cultures as well. So, with that being said, please don't be offended by the next questions I have.
No worries.
But I think we can just kind of like really answer these questions, and hopefully you guys at home watching will learn some things today. Is it true that leprechauns like to drink beer?
I mean,
They are Irish.
they are. I mean,
My American answer.
any excuse to drink, for us is a good excuse.
Then, kind of going along with that, does the term luck of the Irish, as far as you guys both know, does that have anything to do with leprechauns or the fae or the magical creatures?
I mean, yes and no. I think it's more Americanized Irish, especially with like in regards to like sports teams. When an Irish-based American team wins, it's like, oh, we just got lucky. Look at the Irish, and they kind of rolled from there. So, yeah.
Got it. Thanks so much for sharing that. So see, we put some of those, I don't know if you guys want to call them rumors or old wives' tales or what, but we're kind of like giving some truth to that here. So I hope you guys are paying attention. I have some family members that my grandpa was Irish, American Irish, but his mother and them were from Ireland. So I feel like if they say that stuff, they kind of have the little card to say it, right? And before I give off to the audience, let's see, you guys answered so much for us today. Thank you. And really for me, as I said, I do have a strong interest to the fae. Leprechauns, I've always been like intuitively standoffish since I was a little, I believe in them. Since I was a little girl, I always felt that there was something very magical about them and that they do or did exist in some realm of time. But I did always have that little inkling kind of telling me like, yes, if you see one, just kind of observe it and let it do its thing. Don't go looking for them. Don't go to the rainbow looking for the pot of gold, right? You guys definitely hit on that today, so thank you.
That always teases me about when we were on the podcast, because I want to go back to, I've never been to Ireland, but I want to go to Ireland, and I tell him I want to hunt the banshee, and he goes, no.
You don't hunt banshees.
Yeah, definitely.
They'll hunt you more.
Definitely not. That kind of reminds me of, so one of the tarot decks I mentioned to you guys is from Llewellyn Productions, and they're very carefully written, and the illustrations are very, I feel like they're really authentic. And I learned a lot about the fae and creatures like leprechauns because of that card deck, because the artwork really shows you how these creatures would look if you did run into one. And yeah, banshees, I definitely wouldn't want it. I'm getting the chills on my arm right now. I think you guys pretty much answered all the questions that I had today. So does anyone in the audience have any questions for Matt and Ken today?
Hi. I was wondering how leprechauns obviously predate St. Patrick. How did leprechauns and St. Patrick's Day become associated? Just because of Ireland or what?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think it's, again, a more like an Americanized thing where they're trying to associate how many things can we fit into this kind of like holiday with Ireland. Because it's funny because with St. Patrick and leprechauns are almost like the complete opposites. It is said that St. Patrick drove all the snakes out of Ireland, but in reality the snakes were demons. But also the demons and the snakes were actually the druids and the old ways of Ireland. So, I mean, I hate to say don't support St. Patrick on St. Patrick's Day, because that's, the whole holiday is about St. Patrick, right? But if you go down a deeper rabbit hole, which you can do with that, you'll see something much different. Yeah.
Anyone else? I know I did see a few hands.
Hi, Hi, Matt, Kevin. Thank you for speaking today. I'm hoping we can have an exchange after the show. one of the things that I'm involved in or interested in is on the magical side of things as well. And what I wondered was, is there a counter to the effect of the leprechaun? In other words, a protection that might be in place to ward a leprechaun from afflicting people, because after all, they are tricksters, and they are also known to be semi-homicidal in a way, because they are very private beings. And thank you.
No worries. Well, thank you for the question. I think the only thing that comes to mind with like Irish folklore, we always have the trifecta, things that come in three, like charms and the I'm blanking on it, but it looks like three circles together. That kind of thing is a very protective symbol, you know, especially for the Irish. So, but directed at leprechauns, I mean, it's very tough. I'd say just avoid them at all costs, really. You know, it's like an angry dog. You don't go to it and try and pet it and try and steal it and bring it home, you know. Yeah, stay away from it, really. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
That was a good one. Anyone else?
Hey, Matt. Hi, Kevin. So I have a question. You guys being from Ireland and all, and you're doing also your research and studies on leprechauns. So being from Ireland, have you heard stories of someone capturing a leprechaun before?
Yeah, good question. I mean, there are stories of people catching them, but usually it brings bad luck with them, and they kind of go down a bad, what would you call it? Like a bad time, like tournament events, stuff like that. So, like I mentioned earlier on, like a gentleman did find leprechaun bones or had stories of a little leprechaun that would help him and stuff like that, but it's also like small rural places in Ireland that are trying to bring in tourists. You'll get that a lot, you know. I'm sure Americans have it too, or different
Right.
places. So
Okay. Actually, I got one more if you guys don't mind. So in Ireland, as here in America and stuff, we have like saints that we give offerings to and stuff like that. So in Ireland, do you guys have like leprechaun statues that, since you know when people can't catch leprechauns, they have these leprechaun statues that give money offerings?
not really, to be honest with you, because Ireland is a very religious country, and you'll be focused more about like, you know, the statue of Mary, or the statue of Jesus, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, you can always try though, right?
Right, yeah.
You get yourself a leprechaun. Start giving them money though.
There are places like Iceland, they're very into fairies, and they'll actually have road projects that go around with, I believe, fairy hills, or they'll build little houses and give offerings and food and stuff to keep the fairies on their side, so if they ever needed to call upon, or you know, the fairies be in favor of them, and actually, so it's kind of like leprechauns, but on the other side, they're more of a helpful protector.
Okay. Nice. All right, thank you. Well, I just got one more. As being a shoemaker, right, and all, and as seen as they're well suited, looking real sharp, you know, with their little green suit, vest, hat, shoes. What's their fascination with always them wanting to shine shoes, keeping their shoes shiny all the time?
I think that's more of an Americanized, trying to keep up with appearance, like kind of like the way Disney has with the mouse. You know what I mean? It's like mice don't look like that really, but like leprechauns will be associated with. I'm trying to be careful with the words I use. Kind of gypsy type people who were on the road a lot, and like they, trying to look the best. So they can kind of get customers to fix their shoes or shine their shoes or be tailors for them, and stuff like that. So that could be more association with leprechauns. So
Yeah, because I think the Americanized leprechaun is more, is what Matt was saying, I think is more suited for that because we also, the pot of gold, I think is more American.
kind of, yeah,
version.
a little bit, yeah.
So, gold, shiny, they like shiny things,
Yeah.
The leprechaun really doesn't have that pot of gold, it's used to trick people.
Yeah.
Any other questions? You guys had some really good questions. Thank you. And thank you again, guys,
Thank
for
you.
sharing everything. It's been magical.
Yeah,
And
it's
just in
nice.
time for St. Patty's Day weekend, we always have these events that fall into place with whatever's going on. So this is really great. I wish all of you guys and you and Henry and Michelle and everyone watching good luck. Happy St. Patty's Day weekend.
Happy anniversary to my wife. We got married on St. Patty's Day 21 years ago.
Happy anniversary. So, really quick, and I think I know the answer to this already. So, do you feel very lucky that you,
Oh, absolutely.
you lucked out, right?
So the story goes that we worked at the same place at the time we were in Colorado. And where we worked, we had staff parking, so I had to pull out before she could leave. And I'm getting ready to leave, and she's standing in the car just kind of staring at the ground, like, in my mind, I'm like, do I ask what's going on? Or I just kind of like ignore it and go home. And so I asked her what's going on, and she goes, oh, I'm going to go get a beer, and then here, 21 years later, here we're still together. So
Well,
it's magical and lucky because it's that one decision that you make in the instant, and it affects your life. You never know.
So maybe you did have a little lucky leprechaun or a little fae on your shoulder just nudging you to do that, to reach out to her. Well, congratulations to you both and happy anniversary. Happy St. Patty's Day weekend to all of you guys that celebrated out there, and good luck, everyone.